Diesel fuel smells like obligation. Antiseptic smells like forgetting. She had spent the better part of 2 years trying to decide which one she hated more. Korhonen, that was what the badge said. M. Korhonen, PSW, St. Adelard's Long-Term Care, Gatineau, Quebec. The M stood for Mira, though nobody here called her that. Nobody called her much of anything, really. She was the personal support worker on the overnight dementia ward, the woman who changed incontinence pads and repositioned bodies and responded to the call bells that the registered nurses had stopped rushing to answer sometime around the 3rd or 4th hour of any given 12-hour shift. She was background noise with a mop and a pair of purple latex gloves. The ward smelled the way all long-term care facilities smelled after midnight, a low, suffocating blend of institutional dinner, lavender-scented barrier cream, and the particular damp staleness of rooms that no one had opened a window in for 15 years. Mira moved through it without thinking anymore. Her sneakers barely squeaked on the linoleum. She had learned to walk the way she had once learned to clear a building, low center of gravity, weight forward, minimal sound. Room 14 had its light on again. That was Monsieur Vachon, 81 years old, former electrical engineer from Chicoutimi, now convinced, with complete and unshakable confidence, that his wife was waiting for him at the bus stop on Rue Principale, and that everyone in the building was personally conspiring to make him late. His wife had been dead for 6 years. Mira pushed the door open gently. He was standing at the window in his socks and his flannel pajamas, pressing both palms flat against the glass, staring out at the parking lot below. "Monsieur Vachon," she said softly, "it's late. The buses don't run this late." He turned. His face was alert, indignant, the way it always was at this hour. "She's waiting. She's not waiting in the cold," Mira said, keeping her voice even and low. "You know, Margot doesn't like the cold. Come back to bed and she'll call you in the morning." It was a lie, gently administered. She had stopped feeling guilty about it around the 4th month. The truth didn't help him. The lie did. There was a logic to that. She understood completely. She got him settled, tucked the blanket back over his legs, and watched the tension drain out of his shoulders as she dimmed the light. She stood in the doorway for a moment, listening to his breathing slow, before she pulled the door shut and went back to the medication cart. Marguerite Aussi, the charge nurse on nights, was at the nursing station writing incident reports. She was a brisk, efficient woman from Accra via Montreal, with a talent for documentation and a thoroughness that Mira generally respected. But Aussi had made her position on PSWs very clear in the 3 months since Mira had transferred to this ward. You covered the rooms, you handled the personal care, you did not make clinical observations, you did not offer opinions on patient status, and you absolutely did not deviate from the care plan without a nurse authorizing it first. "Vachon was up again," Mira said, stopping at the desk. Aussi didn't look up. "I'll note it. Did you follow the redirection protocol?" "Yes." "Good. The linen cart in the East Wing is still not restocked." "Can you get to that tonight?" Mira said yes. She went and got to it. This was the texture of her nights. Cart restocking, repositioning call bells. Monsieur Vachon at the window. She had a routine that had calcified into something almost comfortable, if you didn't think too hard about what she had been doing before it. She had been a medic with the Canadian Forces, JTFN attachment. 3.5 years embedded with a small, deliberately unnamed element that conducted domestic emergency response operations in the Northwest Territories, northern Manitoba, the James Bay coast. The work had been real. The casualties had been real, industrial accidents in remote sites, catastrophic weather events, the occasional thing that was listed in the paperwork as training incident and was not. She had been good at it. She had been, as her last commanding officer had put it in the tersest possible commendation, extraordinarily effective under high casualty pressure. She had also come home with a left eardrum that no longer worked properly, a knee that had been reconstructed twice, and a recurring dream about a flooding helicopter in the dark that she had decided, after 18 months of trying to talk about it in a VA-referred therapy office in Ottawa, she would simply have to live with instead. She left the forces. She got a PSW certificate in 8 months because the program was short and the diploma got her employed. She transferred to the night shift at St. Adelard's because nights meant fewer supervisors, less small talk, and no one asking why a 34-year-old woman with no apparent history and very calm hands was choosing to work in a dementia ward in Gatineau. Nobody asked. She liked that. The winter outside was the particular February kind that felt personal. -28 with wind. The parking lot glazed in a pale rink of refrozen slush. The night had a specific quality of stillness. Even the highway beyond the tree line had gone quiet by 2 in the morning. She was at the medication cart just outside room 9 when she felt it. Not heard it, felt it. A vibration that started in her molars and worked its way up through her sinuses. A rhythmic, low-frequency percussion that had nothing to do with the building's HVAC system, and nothing to do with the semi-trucks that occasionally rolled past on the highway. She stopped. Her hands went very still on the cart. Thump, 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 thump. Heavy rotor, military timing. Not a news helicopter. Not a medevac Sikorsky in the civilian configuration. The sound had a different mass to it, a density that civilian aircraft didn't produce. It was the sound of something built to carry weight and move fast in conditions that would ground everything else. She closed the medication drawer. She did it quietly, without hurrying, the way she had once learned to police her equipment in the dark when getting calm was not optional. Down the hall, OC had looked up from her paperwork. Her head was tilted slightly, the pen motionless in her hand. "Helicopter," she said, to no one in particular. "Yes," Mira said. The sound grew. And then it didn't just grow, it changed. A second rotor signature blended into the first, slightly offset in frequency. 2 aircraft, flying close, descending. OC stood up and went to the window at the end of the nursing station. Mira did not follow her. She already knew. You learned the geometry of incoming aircraft by sound alone after enough nights in the field. They were not landing on the roof. The roof pad was for the small civilian medevac transfers. Whatever was coming in was too heavy for the roof. They were putting down in the east parking lot. OC's voice came back sharp and high. "What is? Those are military. Those are not our helicopters. What is happening?" Mira walked toward the window. In the parking lot below, 2 CH-146 Griffons were settling onto the asphalt in a backwash of wind and blown snow. Their navigation lights strobed red and white across the face of the building. The moment the skids touched down, the side door of the first aircraft was already moving. Men in tactical cold-weather kit dropped out, carrying someone between them on a rigid litter. They were moving fast, heads down against the rotor wash, angling directly toward the facility's emergency service entrance on the east side. OC grabbed the desk phone. "I'm calling administration. This is completely. We are a long-term care facility. We are not equipped for." "They know that," Mira said, her voice flat and calm in a way she hadn't heard from herself in 2 years. "Then what are they?" The emergency entrance buzzer went off. Then the intercom. A voice, male, controlled but carrying the particular compressed urgency of someone who had been keeping it together for too long. This is Master Corporal Dion, Canadian Forces, requesting immediate medical access. We have a critical trauma casualty. Nearest trauma center is Montfort, 45 minutes in these conditions. We cannot wait 45 minutes. OC looked at the intercom. She looked at Mira. We don't have a trauma bay. We don't have an ER. We have 23 residents with dementia and a medication room. Buzz them in, Mira said. I cannot just. Buzz them in. There was something in the tone, not loudness, not aggression. Something underneath the words that OC had apparently not heard from a PSW before, because she hesitated for one full second and then hit the door release. The east corridor filled with cold air and the smell of aviation exhaust and something else. The particular copper iron smell that had nothing to do with mechanical systems. There were 4 of them carrying the litter. They wore cold-weather tactical gear in Cadpat, snow-caked and torn at one knee. The casualty was a young woman, mid-20s. Mira processed, instantly, female, slight build, combat kit cut away at the torso. The field dressing over her right side was soaked through to a deep burgundy. Breathing was shallow and asymmetric. Lips had the beginnings of a cyanotic tint in the fluorescent light. The man in front, Dion, presumably, scanned the nursing station with a controlled, exhausted desperation. He was 30 at most, with the eyes of someone who had been awake for too long and making decisions for longer. We need a doctor, he said. There is no physician on site at night, OC said, her voice climbing. I keep telling you, this is long-term care. She has a tension pneumo, Mira said. She said it the way she might have noted the weather, flat, certain, already moving toward the supply room. Her trachea is starting to shift. She has maybe 8 minutes before her heart rate crashes. Get her into room 7. It's empty. Move, Dion looked at her. PSW badge, purple latex gloves, hair pulled back in a messy knot. None of the visual markers he was looking for. Who are you? He said. Someone who has done this before. She was already past him, pulling the supply room door open. Room 7. Now. Go. He went. She found what she needed not in a trauma kit. There wasn't one. But in the wound care supply cabinet and the medication room crash cart that St. Adelard's kept stocked for cardiac events. A 14-gauge IV catheter, tegaderm dressings, curved hemostats. A thoracic chest tube from the transfer kit that had been sitting in the bottom drawer since 2019, because the care facility received it in an equipment lot and no one had ever had cause to open it. She brought it to room 7 on a tray, not running. Running scared the residents. The 4 soldiers had the casualty on the adjustable hospital bed, which they had cranked flat. One of them was holding manual pressure on the chest dressing with both hands. The woman on the bed was conscious, barely, eyes open, tracking, with that specific distant quality of someone who was working very hard to stay present. I need her upper body elevated 30 degrees, Mira said, pulling on a fresh pair of gloves. And I need 2 of you to hold her shoulders. She's going to fight this. OC had appeared in the doorway. Her face had gone completely white. You are a PSW. You are not authorized to? Then call a doctor, Myra said. She found the second intercostal space on the right side of the woman's chest, palpated the mid-clavicular line. If there's a physician who can be here in the next 6 minutes, call them right now and I will step back. Silence. That's what I thought. She uncapped the catheter, the casualty. Her name tape read Leclerc, looked up at Mira with eyes that were working very hard. You've had this done before, Mira said quietly. Not a question. Leclerc managed a fractional nod. Then you know it's going to feel like pressure, and then relief. Look at the ceiling. She placed the needle. The resistance gave way with a distinct, unmistakable hiss. A thin rush of air escaped the catheter. Mira held it steady, watching Leclerc's chest. 3 seconds. 5. The frantic, shallow panting began to slow. The asymmetry evened out incrementally. The cyanosis around Leclerc's mouth began, not to disappear, but to recede, the color warming toward something less final. O2 sat, Mira said without looking up. One of the soldiers, a woman with a medic patch on her sleeve, had a portable pulse oximeter on Leclerc's finger. 62. Coming up. 69. 73 Aya. Keep going. 78. 81. Mira taped the catheter securely, her hands moving in the specific economy of someone who has done something so many times the motion no longer required conscious direction. She stepped back. She looked at Leclerc's chest, rising and falling. Still not good, but not dying in the next 2 minutes. That bought us time, she said to Dion, who had flattened himself against the wall to give her room and had not moved or spoken since. She needs a chest tube. I can do it, but I need to tell you clearly, I am doing this with wound care equipment in a dementia ward with no surgical backup. If you want to wait for Montfort, I can pack her and stabilize her for transport, and she has a reasonable chance. Dion looked at Leclerc. Leclerc, whose O2 sat, was now at 84 and climbing, looked at Mira. Do it, Leclerc said. Her voice was barely a thread, but it was there. Dion nodded. The chest tube insertion was not clean. Nothing about it was clean. Mira worked in the 5th intercostal space, anterior to the mid-axillary line, with hemostats and a scalpel she had found in a sealed procedure kit that had been packaged for wound debridement. She did not have lidocaine in the concentration she wanted. She worked fast for exactly that reason. She spoke to Leclerc throughout, not reassuringly, not with the practiced softness of palliative care, but in the specific, information-dense way she had once spoken to casualties in the field, because the voice of someone who knew what they were doing was its own kind of anesthetic. Dark blood drained. She connected the tube to a makeshift water seal using a sterile IV bag that one of Dion's soldiers rigged on the flaf tubing from the ward supply room. It was field improvisation in a long-term care facility at 2:30 in the morning, and it worked because the physics of it didn't care where they were. Leclerc's O2 sat climbed to 91. Her blood pressure, read from the portable monitor the medic had pulled from their kit, came back to something survivable. She needs blood, Mira said. She was pulling off her gloves. Her hands were steady. Her hands were always steady during the thing, and then afterward, her left knee would start to shake, and she would have to lock it. She was locking it now. She's lost significant volume. Get her to Montfort. Tell them chest tube in situ, water seal, right-sided hemethorax plus pneumo, field decompression performed prior. BP is 88/60. They'll want to know it went up, not down. Dion was staring at her. What? She said. You're a PSW. Yes. That's not. You don't just. He stopped, restarted. Where did you learn to do that? Mira pulled the gloves off finger by finger and dropped them in the waste bin. I was a medic. A long time ago. Canadian Forces? Yes. He looked around the room. The makeshift chest tube. The improvised water seal. The still, slow rise and fall of Leclerc's chest. Why are you here? He meant it genuinely, not as an insult, as a question that had no logical answer given what he'd just watched. Mira moved to the sink and turned the hot water on. The pipes knocked before the water came, the way old building pipes always did. Same reason Leclerc joined up, probably, she said. Some people need to feel useful. After a while, useful gets complicated. She scrubbed her hands. The water went pink, then clear. We'll need to move her in the next 10 minutes if the roads are going to be manageable, she said. Your medic should sit with her in transport and monitor the drainage. If the output exceeds 200 milliliters in the next 30 minutes, tell Montfort on arrival. Don't wait until you get there. The medic? Corporal something. Mira hadn't caught the name, nodded. She looked very young and very serious, and like she was going to replay this night in her head for a long time. Dion lingered while his team began preparing Leclerc for transfer. Is there anything I can do? He said. It came out more carefully than it sounded. Nothing I need. Mira dried her hands on the rough paper towel. I mean, we bypassed protocol. We came to a facility that wasn't equipped. You're going to have the administration on you by 8 a.m. I know. That's not nothing. Myra looked at him. He had the face of someone who had spent tonight, afraid he was going to watch someone die, and was still processing that she hadn't. It was a specific look. She recognized it. It'll be fine, she said. They'll write a report. I'll write a statement. It will say, I acted outside my scope of practice under emergency necessity. That's true. They'll decide whether to suspend my certificate pending review. She paused. Leclerc's alive. That's the only arithmetic that matters to me. Dion reached into his breast pocket. He pulled out a small card. Forces issue. Just rank and contact number. No unit. He set it on the edge of the sink. If you need a character statement or anything, you call that. Mira looked at the card. She didn't pick it up. You really going to stay here? He asked. Nights. Dementia. Ward. After, he gestured at the room. Mira turned off the tap. Monsieur Vachon in room 14 thinks his wife is waiting at a bus stop, she said. He wakes up every night and stands at the window to find her. Every night. Someone has to tell him she's not there. That's not nothing either. Dion was quiet. Get Leclerc to Montfort, Mira said. He nodded. He went. She listened to the four of them wheel the litter back down the east corridor. She heard the emergency door open. She heard the cold come in. And then the rotors started again. Building from idle to full power. The thump, thump, thump filling the building the way it had before. Rattling the single pane windows in their frames. And then the sound lifted and thinned and moved away into the February dark over the Ottawa River. The ward settled back into itself, the hum of the HVAC. A call bell from room 11. The particular midnight silence of a building full of old people who were sleeping through something they would never know had happened. Osi was at the nursing station when Mira walked past. She was sitting very still, her incident report form in front of her, pen capped. She didn't look up right away. When she did, her expression had changed in a way that Mira recognized and had no particular use for. The awe, the reassessment. The eyes moving over her as if trying to reconcile two different versions of the same person. I'm going to have to document this, Osi said finally. I know. I don't even know how to document this. Start with time of arrival, Mira said. That's always the right place to start. She took the call bell. Room 11. Madame Trottier, 87 years old, who sometimes woke up afraid the Germans were coming and needed someone to sit with her until she remembered the war had been over for a very long time. Myra pushed open the door. The nightlight threw a pale yellow circle on the wall beside the bed. Trottier was sitting up, her white hair loose, her hands knotted in the blanket, her eyes bright and frightened. It's all right, Mira said, pulling the chair to the bedside. It's quiet. There's nothing out there tonight. She sat down. Trottier watched her face for a moment, the way people did when they needed to borrow someone else's calm, and then her grip on the blanket slowly loosened and she lay back, and her breathing softened. The call bell light went off. Mira stayed where she was. She didn't look at the door. She didn't look at the window. She just sat in the pale yellow light and listened to the old woman's breathing even out. And outside, the last sounds of the Griffons faded into the distance, and the night went back to being ordinary, and she let it.